In a small town, there lived a young woman who had big dreams. She wasn't interested in the ordinary life that everyone expected her to follow. All she wanted was to become a singer. Her heart beat for music, and every time she thought about it, she felt alive. She would dream of standing on big stages, performing in front of thousands, and hearing the crowd cheer her on. It wasn't just a hobby, it was her passion. But in a town where most people focused on practical jobs and safe careers, her dreams seemed too far-fetched. The people around her didn't understand. The most vocal of her critics was her older brother. Every time she mentioned her desire to pursue music, he would laugh and tell her it was a childish dream. "You'll never make it," he'd say, with a smirk. "You're wasting your time. There are more important things to focus on." His words stung, but they didn't stop her. Despite his discouragement, she kept practicing. She would sing while doing the dishes, hum melodies while walking to the store, and even write songs in the quiet of the night when everyone else was asleep. She didn't tell anyone, but deep inside, she knew that her passion was something that couldn't be ignored. The more her brother laughed, the more determined she became to prove herself. But life wasn't easy. She had to deal with the reality of bills and responsibilities, and her dreams often felt like they were slipping further away. She took a job in a local store to make ends meet, but it was never enough to put her music first. So, she would sing, in her free time, using whatever equipment she could afford, even if it wasn't the best. It wasn't ideal, but she made do. She would record her voice on a cheap microphone, learning how to make the most of what she had. It was a lonely process, but the joy she felt when she sang made it all worth it. Her brother's laughter echoed in her mind every day, but she refused to let it define her. She began looking for any opportunity to share her music, even though it felt like no one would ever take her seriously. Then, one day, she heard about a local talent competition. It wasn't a big event, but it felt like the perfect chance to show everyone what she could do. Without telling anyone, she signed up. It wasn't about winning. It was about proving to herself that she could take a step toward her dream. The days leading up to the competition were filled with nervous energy. She practiced every day, sometimes until her throat hurt, but she never stopped. The doubt was still there, but so was the hope. On the night of the competition, she walked into the venue with her heart racing. She looked around, seeing all the other contestants who seemed more experienced and confident. She almost wanted to turn around and leave, but something inside her pushed her forward. When it was her turn to perform, she stepped on stage with shaky legs. But once she started singing, everything changed. The crowd became silent, listening closely to her voice. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was hers. She felt every word of the song, and for the first time, it felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Even though she didn't win the competition, something shifted. People noticed her, and one of the judges handed her a business card from a record producer. For the first time, she realized her dream wasn't just a fantasy, it was a possibility, and that was the moment everything started to change. A minute after that night, something in her changed. It was like a spark had been lit inside her, and no matter how hard life tried to put it out, she refused to let it die. She had tasted a small bit of success, and that little taste was enough to fuel her dreams even more. But the road ahead, it wasn't going to be easy. She still had to work a full-time job to pay the bills, but every spare moment she had, she used it to work on her music. She would wake up early, before the sun, and write lyrics, record tracks, or experiment with melodies. Even after a long day of work, when she was exhausted, she'd grab her guitar or sit at the piano and keep creating. The process was slow, and she often found herself frustrated, wondering if all the effort was worth it. It wasn't easy being both a dreamer and a realist. She knew it would take time, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was getting closer to something big. There were many nights when she would lie awake, thinking about how much she wanted her dream to come true. There were days when the doubt crept back in. The voices of people who didn't believe in her echoed in her mind. especially her brother's laughter. He had told her so many times that she was wasting her time, and the pain of those words still stung. But instead of letting it break her, it made her more determined. She knew that if she wanted to succeed, she had to believe in herself more than anyone else did. One evening, after work, she sat down with her phone and posted a short video of her singing one of her original songs. It wasn't anything fancy, just her voice and guitar, with the soft glow of her bedroom light in the background. But she shared it with the world anyway. She didn't expect much, but within hours, the comments started coming in. Some were from strangers who told her how much they loved the song. Others were from people who said they'd been following her journey and were excited to see her continue. It was only a few people, but it felt like the world was listening, and that was all she needed. She started to post more, each time pushing herself a little more. She recorded videos of her singing, shared behind-the-scenes moments of her songwriting process, and even opened up about the struggles she faced. The more she shared, the more she began to grow her audience. Slowly, her music started to gain attention. A few of her videos went viral, and she gained thousands of followers. People who had once ignored her were now asking for more. The idea that she could be someone who actually made it in the music world began to feel more and more possible. But her success didn't come easily. There were still days when she felt like giving up. She had setbacks. Things didn't always go as planned. Not everyone was supportive, and there were moments when she doubted herself again. But every time she wanted to quit, she remembered why she started in the first place. Music was her passion. It was the one thing that made her feel truly alive. And no matter how hard it got, she couldn't walk away from it. One day, she was contacted by a producer who had seen her videos online. He offered her the chance to record a few songs in a studio, something she had only dreamed of. The excitement was overwhelming. She still couldn't believe it was happening. Her hard work was paying off, and the opportunities were starting to open up in ways she never imagined. But even with this newfound success, she knew that this was just the beginning. She had to keep pushing, keep working, and keep believing in herself. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt like she was on the right path. The day of the recording studio session arrived, and she could hardly believe it. What had once seemed like an impossible dream was now within her reach. The producer who had contacted her gave her a chance to record a few of her songs professionally, something she had only imagined when sitting in her small room, strumming her guitar late at night. But now, she was going to be in an actual studio with high-end equipment, working alongside people who believed in her. When she stepped into the studio, she was nervous. It was so different from what she was used to. The large space, the shiny equipment, the sound engineers working behind the scenes. She felt like a small fish in a big pond, unsure of how to fit in. But the producer, who was kind and patient, made her feel comfortable right away. He reassured her that she was there because she had talent, and he believed in her. The first time she sang into the professional microphone, she was taken aback by how clear her voice sounded through the speakers. It was like hearing herself for the first time, not just in the way she imagined, but as others would hear her too. The music filled the room in a way that made her feel like she was part of something much bigger than herself. It was a feeling she would never forget. As the hours passed, she found herself getting more and more comfortable. The nerves slowly melted away as she sang her heart out. The producer helped her fine-tune her songs, suggesting small changes to make the melodies stronger and the lyrics more impactful. For the first time, she realized that creating music was a collaborative effort, and she welcomed the chance to learn from others who had more experience in the industry. By the time the session ended, she had recorded 3 of her best songs. They weren't perfect. She knew there was always room for improvement, but they were real, and they were hers. The feeling of accomplishment was overwhelming. She had come so far from the days when her brother mocked her dreams. In that moment, she realized that it wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving to herself that she could do it, no matter what anyone else thought. When she left the studio that day, she felt like a different person. There was a new sense of confidence in her steps. She had crossed a line she had drawn for herself years ago, and now there was no going back. The recordings from that session would soon be shared online, and she couldn't wait to see how people would respond. She knew that the journey ahead was still long, but for the first time, she could see the path clearly ahead of her. As days passed, the feedback started rolling in. People began to notice her music, and it wasn't long before her songs were being shared on social media. Some of her fans even started making videos with her songs playing in the background, sharing them with their friends. It was surreal. Her music, which had once only been shared with a small circle of family and friends, was now being heard by hundreds, then thousands of people. She still couldn't believe how much had changed in such a short time. She remembered the days when she would quietly record songs in her bedroom, not sure if anyone would ever hear them. Now she had an audience, and it felt amazing. But it wasn't just about the numbers or the attention. It was about the connection she felt with the people who were moved by her music. They were the ones who believed in her, even when she wasn't sure if she could believe in herself. Her brother had always laughed at her dreams, but now, with every new fan who reached out to her, she felt like she was finally on the right track. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong, it was about living her truth and doing what she loved. She had made it this far, and the future looked brighter than ever before. The day of her first big performance came faster than she expected. It felt like everything was happening at once. She had been invited to perform at a local music festival, a chance to showcase her talent to a crowd that wasn't just her friends or family. This was different. She had performed at small events before, but this was a real, public performance with a big audience. The nerves were starting to set in. The moment she arrived at the festival venue, she could feel the energy in the air. The stage was bigger than she imagined, with lights shining down on the performers. There were other musicians preparing for their set, each one with their own style and sound. She watched them all with a mixture of awe and nervousness. Everyone looked so confident, so professional. It was hard not to compare herself to them. As the time for her performance drew nearer, the anxiety began to build. What if she messed up? What if her voice cracked? What if the audience didn't like her music? These were the thoughts that ran through her mind as she tried to calm her nerves. She walked around backstage, breathing deeply, reminding herself that this was her moment. She had worked so hard for this. When it was finally her turn, she stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding at first, and for a moment, she felt like she couldn't breathe. But as soon as she heard the first chord of her song being played, everything shifted. The music filled her, and she forgot about the nerves. She just sang. She let the lyrics flow from her heart, not caring about the people in the crowd or what they might think. For those few minutes, it was just her and the music. As she sang, she noticed the crowd reacting. They were quiet at first, but as the song went on, she could feel them connecting to her. People started nodding along, some even singing quietly to the lyrics. It wasn't just about her performance anymore. It was about the connection she was making with the audience. The music was bringing them together, and she realized that this was what it was all about. When the last note of her song echoed through the venue, she felt a rush of relief. The crowd erupted into applause, and for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged on that stage. She hadn't just performed for them. She had shared a piece of herself with them, and they had responded. After the performance, people came up to her, congratulating her, and telling her how much they loved her music. One woman even told her that her song had brought tears to her eyes, something she hadn't expected to hear. It was moments like this that made all the late nights of practicing, all the doubt and fear, feel worth it. But perhaps the most meaningful moment of all came later that night. Her brother, the one who had laughed at her dreams for so long, called her. He was quiet at first, and she wondered if he was calling to criticize her, like he had done so many times before. But then, he spoke up. "I heard your performance today," he said. "You were amazing. I'm proud of you." She could hardly believe it. After everything, after all the doubts and the hurtful words, her brother had finally come around. It wasn't about him admitting he was wrong. It was about him seeing her for who she truly was, a musician, someone who had worked hard and earned her place. In that moment, she knew that her journey wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about finding herself, about following her passion no matter how many people doubted her. And now, with her brother's words of support, she felt like she could truly move forward and keep chasing her dreams. It was just the beginning, but it felt like everything was falling into place. As time went on, things began to shift in ways she couldn't have imagined. The phone calls, messages, and emails kept coming in. She had started to gain some serious attention, and her music was reaching people in ways she never thought possible. It wasn't just local anymore. She had fans in other cities, even countries. She had built a small but loyal following online, with people sharing her songs, creating videos to her music, and commenting on how much they related to her lyrics. It felt surreal, like she had crossed a line into something bigger than herself. But with this new attention came pressure. She had to keep up with the demand for more music, more content, and more performances. The excitement of having her music heard by so many people was tempered by the reality of constantly being in the public eye. There were days when it felt like too much, when she wondered if she could keep going at this pace. The self-doubt she thought she had left behind crept back in. What if the next song wasn't as good? What if people started to lose interest? What if it was all just a lucky break? But then, she would remember how far she had come, how much she had worked to get here. She didn't have the luxury of quitting. Music was her lifeblood. And though the pressure was heavy at times, she couldn't ignore the fact that she was living the dream she once thought was impossible. So, she kept going. One day, she received an invitation from a larger music festival. This was one of the big ones, the kind of event where major artists performed. She couldn't believe it. It felt like the next step, the one that would take her from local performer to someone who was really in the game. But with that invitation came another wave of nerves. She had played small venues, and she had performed in front of crowds. But this was different. This was going to be huge, with thousands of people in the audience, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was ready. As the day of the festival approached, the nerves built up. Every day she would practice harder than ever, focusing on her set and making sure every note was perfect. She knew the audience would expect a flawless performance, and she didn't want to disappoint them. But she also knew that perfection wasn't the point. She wasn't there to be perfect. She was there to be herself, to share her music, and to connect with people. The day of the festival arrived, and as she stepped onto the stage, she was overwhelmed. The crowd stretched as far as she could see, and the noise from the audience was deafening. She could feel the excitement and energy in the air, but she also felt her heart racing. For a moment, she thought about walking off the stage and calling it all off. But then, she remembered how far she had come. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to back down now. When the music started, she took a deep breath and sang with everything she had. She didn't care about the nerves anymore. She didn't care about being perfect. She just wanted to give the audience a piece of her heart. And as the performance went on, she saw it in their faces, the connection, the way they sang along, the way they felt what she was singing. That was what it was all about. When she finished her set, the crowd erupted into applause, and for the first time, she realized that she wasn't just performing for them. She was sharing something real, something that meant something to both her and the people who were listening. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about perfection. It was about creating something meaningful. After the performance, people approached her, congratulating her and telling her how much they loved her music. For the first time, she truly understood that this was what she was meant to do. She wasn't doing it for the applause or the attention. She was doing it because it was who she was, and with every performance, every song she wrote, she was taking one more step toward becoming the artist she had always dreamed of being. The road ahead was still long, but now it felt like anything was possible. Many months passed, and her life started to change in ways she couldn't have imagined. The music was no longer just a passion, it was becoming her career. Opportunities were coming in fast, and every day felt like a new adventure. She was performing in bigger venues, signing contracts with music labels, and gaining fans from all over the world. It was everything she had ever dreamed of, and more. But with all the excitement came the pressure to keep delivering, to keep being the artist people expected her to be. She spent countless hours in the studio, writing new songs, rehearsing, and perfecting her craft. Sometimes it felt like she was on a treadmill, running faster and faster, but not sure if she was really getting anywhere. The pace was exhausting, and even though she was living her dream, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. One evening, after a long day in the studio, she received a message from her brother. He had been quiet for a while, and she hadn't heard from him much since the festival performance. She opened the message, expecting just a casual, "How's it going?" But what she read took her by surprise. "I've been thinking a lot about you lately," the message said. "I know I used to laugh at your dreams and doubt you, but seeing everything you've accomplished, I have to admit, I'm proud of you. You were right. You can do it. Keep going, no matter what." Reading those words, she felt a wave of emotions. There was relief, joy, and even a bit of sadness, but above all, she felt grateful. Grateful that despite everything, despite all the doubt and negativity, she had never given up. And now, after all the hard work and struggle, her brother finally saw her for who she truly was. Not just the little sister with big dreams, but an artist who had made it. She immediately texted him back, telling him how much his words meant to her. They talked for a long time, sharing their feelings about the past, about their relationship, and about the future. It was a moment of healing, a moment that made her realize that this journey wasn't just about the music. It was about the people who were part of it, especially the ones who had doubted her. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about showing them the strength and resilience she had inside, the strength she had always had, but never knew how to share. Her brother's message reminded her that the journey she was on wasn't just for herself. It was for everyone who believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. And it was for everyone who had ever doubted her, because now they could see the truth. She had made it, and nothing could take that away. Over the next few weeks, she took some time to reflect on everything she had accomplished. She looked back on the long nights of writing, the struggles with self-doubt, and the constant push to keep going, even when everything seemed impossible. And in that moment of reflection, she realized that it wasn't the fame or the recognition that mattered most. It was the journey, the growth, and the people who had supported her along the way. She wasn't just a singer anymore. She was an artist who had learned how to stay true to herself, no matter the challenges. And as she looked ahead to the future, she knew one thing for sure: she would never stop following her dreams, because now she knew she could achieve whatever she set her mind to. With every step, every song, and every performance, she was living proof that anything was possible, as long as you believed in yourself. As she continued on her journey, things began to fall into place in ways that felt almost magical. The opportunities kept coming, and she was living a life that, just a few years ago, seemed impossible. She had performed at large venues, worked with talented producers, and even started to create a name for herself in the music industry. But despite the success, there was still a part of her that felt like something was missing. It wasn't about the fame. She had already realized that. It wasn't about the recognition, the applause, or the shiny contracts. What mattered to her now was the deeper connection, the one she had with her fans, with the people who believed in her from the beginning, and with herself. She had learned so much about perseverance, about never giving up, and about the importance of staying true to who she was, even when the world around her didn't understand. One night, after a long performance, she sat down in her dressing room, reflecting on the months that had passed. She thought about the small victories, those first few comments on her music videos, the first email from a fan telling her how much her song meant to them, and even the message from her brother. Each one of those moments had shaped her, given her the strength to keep going when things got tough. They had reminded her that, despite the challenges, she was on the right path. But now, she was ready for something more. She wanted to create music that was even more personal, more vulnerable. She had spent so many years hiding behind her songs, not fully sharing who she was with the world. But now, she felt like it was time to be truly open. She wanted her music to tell stories, not just the happy ones, but the sad ones, the struggles, and the moments of self-doubt that she had experienced along the way. She knew that by sharing these parts of herself, she could connect even more deeply with her listeners. So, she started writing. And this time, the words came more easily. The melodies were more raw, more honest. She poured her heart into every song, no longer worried about what others would think or whether it was perfect. She was creating music for herself first, and for her fans second. And the beauty of that was that it felt real. It felt authentic. As she worked on her new songs, she began to realize how far she had come. From the days when she hid in her room, dreaming of performing, to the days when she stood on stage in front of thousands, sharing her soul with the world, everything had changed. But at the same time, nothing had changed. She was still that young woman who believed in something bigger than herself, something that couldn't be stopped by doubt or fear. Her brother, who had once laughed at her dreams, was now her biggest supporter. He would often attend her performances, standing in the crowd with a proud smile on his face. It wasn't just that he believed in her now, it was that he understood her. He understood what it took to get to this point, and he was proud of the woman she had become. One evening, as she stood backstage before a big performance, she thought about all the moments that had led her here. The tears, the struggles, the laughter, and the love. She had made it. But more importantly, she had found herself along the way. She had discovered that the journey wasn't about proving anyone wrong or chasing after the applause. It was about sharing who she was, opening her heart, and connecting with others through music. And as the lights dimmed and the crowd cheered, she stepped onto the stage with a sense of peace. She had already won. She was exactly where she needed to be. The future was full of possibilities, but for now, all that mattered was the moment she was living in. The music, the connection, and the pure joy of doing what she loved. She was ready for whatever came next, because she knew one thing for sure: nothing could stop her now.